So the last time we did this, we were in the beautiful northwest of Scotland, and of course it's Colin's patch. I felt it was time to see if we could anglify him in some way. I don't think he's ever been south of Berwick before, so where could be nicer than Northumberland?
Well, I'm looking forward, Joe, to the anglification experience, but I've never seen this coastline before, and from just the early views I've seen, it looks quite remarkable. Castles, beaches, I think will offer a lot of opportunity for photographs.
The castles here are a legacy of the defensive role that this part of the world played, of course mostly defending the world against the Scots. There seems to be quite appropriate to bring Colin down here.
This is very different for me because I'm used to working on the west coast of Scotland. I'm obviously going to learn from Joe just how to deal with the light at dusk and dawn here.
We'll find it good fun over the next few days.
And I've heard a little rumour, Joe, that you're going to show us the nightlife in Northumberland.
Well, it has been mentioned, so let's see how it goes.
I look forward to that.
The thing about Northumberland, there aren't any mountains here. Everything's very flat and open, and the coast in particular is just an amazing place. The skyscapes here are just fantastic.
The morning's looking pretty good right now. I think there's a strong possibility we might get a great sunrise.
It's looking promising.
And this, Joe, is all basalt, is it?
It is, yeah, volcanic rock. Divided by these sandy areas. Can be really good for photography, especially as the tide's sort of rolling in and then rolling back.
What's that? That looks to me like a goat or a stag up here.
Yeah, somebody's painted it on the rock side. And that's right, it is indeed a stag.
You can see this columnar basalt here.
Exactly, it's volcanic rock that's been spewed out of an eruption probably 60 million years ago. I'm not an expert in geology.
I think you're pretty good in geology, Joe.
It's amazing, isn't it, though, our islands, the amount of variety is just fantastic, and that really helps.
Well, I think certainly in Scotland, you know, for such a relatively small country, the diversity of rock types that you find.
Talking of Scotland, it's not very often you head south of the border, is it?
Well, no, I've never been in England before.
As we look around, we start to look back.
Oh, there's a castle. That's a bonus.
Yeah, that castle is Bamburgh, and it is one of the most ancient fortified sites in the UK. There's been fortification there for 1600 years. And the core of the castle that you can see today was built in around 1070, 1080. So
it's an impressive looking castle.
Oh, it is. It's enormous.
So Joe, how many times have you been in this location?
I couldn't tell you, it's dozens, it really is. Dozens of
times.
Well,
as you know, it's my first time here, and it's quite remarkable. Quite fussy photographically. You've really got to work for a composition here.
That's true. It's a combination of the very dark basalt and the bright sand, and then the seaweed. A lot of complexity to it, but having said that, there's some lovely shapes and structures. And then it's incredibly variable. We've got that full sunlight at the moment, which is making it impossible to shoot into.
Yep.
But then with these clouds, very soon it'll be gone again. But one thing, Colin, sorry, I was just going to say is that the tide is a big factor here. And so any given morning, the tide's obviously different, the weather and so on. There's so many different variables.
But I think this is a good spot because we've got away from this black stone, and we've got elevated values in the sand. It's a much lighter an area foreground to the picture. So I think we've chosen well here.
Yeah, I think it is a good spot. And I mean, it's incredible how strong the sun is now. You think for a couple of minutes ago we were shooting and it's quite soft light shooting into it. And again, and if we look behind us now, it's just incredible. The storm light.
Can we move the castle?
Yeah, put it over there. It'd be really good.
Stunning, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Look at that sky.
Yeah, phenomenal.
You've got that yellowy light and the blue behind, just fantastic.
Yeah, it really is an amazing spot. I've managed to shoot in the past occasionally being able to pick out these, you see the black basalt, like miniature cliffs and glinting golden light. So it has lots of possibilities.
And obviously in the summer, the sun's going to be rising out here, so you're going to get far more side lighting.
So, yeah, exactly. So, you know, in this part of the UK and further north in Scotland, of course, the sun, as you know, it rises in the northeast in the summer, whereas it's in the southeast at this time of year.
But
so
great light.
Oh yeah, fantastic. And there's so many different characteristics and moods. So, although, you know, people come here because of the castle, but actually it's the whole coastal environment that is what makes it
fantastic.
special.
Well, we're just about to lose that sun again. It's going to rise into the canopy of cloud now, and hopefully it'll allow us to shoot again.
Look at that. Look at that. That's amazing. The waves with the breeze just blowing the
spume.
like spindrift back off, and it's just amazing in that setting sun.
It's remarkable.
Yeah, beautiful. There was a fantastic group of knot, you know, little seabirds.
Yep.
I think they're seabirds, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they maybe
waders.
Waders. There you go. You know much more about birds than me.
Well, I wouldn't bet on it.
No, it was lovely to see, and we've had oyster catchers here this morning as well. Guillemots, I think.
I mean, there's no doubt that birds just enrich the whole experience of being outdoors.
They do.
And you know, earlier in my career, you know, I decided that as much as I love birds, that I was very happy just to experience them as part of the landscape. For me, they're just another element, another tier within the landscape. And I know many people are interested in photographing them, but I you know, I always felt that I could say more about the natural world through the medium of landscape photography than through photographing birds themselves.
Yeah, that's such an interesting kind of discussion for photographers, I think, is how much of it is about animals and birds, you know, wildlife, and how much is about the landscape itself, the habitat that supports them. And of course, both things are equally important, really.
They are.
But the way that I think, I'm too slow. I can't do wildlife photography. I've tried it once or twice, but I love being able to slow down, you know, use the tripod, and just feel immersed in the landscape itself. And then, yeah, as you say, you know, the wildlife, it's all.
I think it's got to speak to you. The landscape's got to speak to you at some level. You know, you've got to connect with it really, and then subtract. It's easier said than done, as we both know.
Yeah, it is, exactly. It's funny to think that this scene here, you can imagine that castle being, when it was built 1,000 years ago, that probably didn't look that much different, apart from the fact that there's a fair number of local dog walkers here, which there probably weren't 1,000 years ago. But no, it hasn't changed that much in all that time.
Remarkable.
So I've been shooting quite wide with a 24mm prime, and using some of these, a little bit of the edge of the basalt and the reflected light in there, and And then the sand ripples are really, really good. With that glinting sunlight in, the textures appear really well. How about you?
Well, I was doing something very similar, as you know, Joe, but you know what I really liked earlier on was just some of the colours and the tonal values that were beginning to develop in the clouds, and some of it was reflected in the water. Unfortunately, it was just a bit lively at the surface though, and we weren't really picking up the reflection, but I think it was a good choice here. You know, we've got the separation from the rocks and a good lead into the castle itself.
It's amazing how just a very small amount of additional height can help, isn't it?
Very much. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, when we were down there, the elements lined up, whereas just that few feet above is given us that overview, and we can see on top of the water surface and the sand.
Yeah, there's a nice feeling of flow from here, and it's both a mixture of the shape of the foreground, but also the texture of the ripples and the way that they're patterned in relation to the castle and the landscape in the distance. So yeah, I think it's a successful position. I must say, you know, all the times I come here, and of course I don't come here all the time, but all the times I've been here, I've always seemed to find a different spot to work in, and this was new for me this morning.
Well, I think you know what determines when you come to places, you know, unless you're running tours or workshops here, is really the position of the sun. I mean, you know, is it sunrise or is it sunset? The photograph that you want to take will obviously dictate that, but it's at what time of the year you're going to come here. And obviously, you know this coast well, and the summer months, May or mid-May or June, I'm sure is going to give you the optimal light, but it's not going to be as low as it is at the moment. You know, that low arc of the sun, which is, you know, the autumn, October in particular, October, November, the sun's in a great place, isn't it? Long shadows and
you can work through the day very often because it never gets up that high, which really helps. So yeah. It's true in the summer months, particularly, boy, there's at least 6 or 7 hours in the middle of the day when you rarely can do anything.
And that magic hour, it doesn't last very long. It doesn't last an hour. The sun comes up and there's seldom very much colour. You know, it's just such a fast ascension, and because the sun's on such a high arc. But we did what we could.
Yeah, I'm happy.
Yeah, indeed.
So Colin, I reckon that the sun's pretty much done its thing now for us, and it might be just rather packed down and yeah?
Yeah, I think we've done it.
And I've got a few other places I'd like to show you on this bit of coast as well.
Look forward to that. It's a stunning location, Joe. Where exactly is the river here?
Well, there are 2 rivers actually that come out into this bay. It's called Woodland Bay. And they form this huge expanse of sand. It's a mixture of sedimentary or mud that comes down, and then gradually it's more and more sandy here, and it's a great spot for wading birds. And in the far distance we can see Holy Island. And this is, Butyl Point is the name of the spot we're standing on. Poetically, I think of it as the point of light because it's just surrounded by sky.
It is a fantastic location here. This elevation gives you the opportunity to shoot across something that's essentially flat, which is always difficult because, you know, if you're down there, there's not really very much relief, not very many edges. And I think the challenge here is to try and make order from chaos, find find some lines that constitute a composition, because it's not an obvious, easy photographic location.
Well, I always say that if landscape photography were easy, everyone would do it, right? So thank goodness it isn't. But yeah, you're right. It is. That elevation does open up. It's almost like the beginnings of aerial photography.
Yeah.
And the shape of the river, the estuary, that wonderful serpentine line that runs round and into the sea, and then the sea opens up round to our right as well. And of course, any day it's always different with the sky. What is really special about it is the dune system itself, the marram grass, which, you know, we walked over, didn't we, on that ridge? It's absolutely lovely. It falls away both sides.
Fantastic.
And, yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful spot.
And it's just such an airy feeling up here. It's, you know, great for, you know, the mental health. You know,
exactly.
It just lifts you.
Everything's just open, and from a photographic point of view, what makes it a particularly fascinating place to be is that, you know, where are we now? Mid-November. We can see the sun setting over the Cheviot, I think it is, in the far distance. Like and you can imagine it in the summer, it sets over Holy Island. And in the summer morning, it rises literally opposite to where the sun is now. In a winter morning like here, it would be behind the dune. But it's just so open, and you can shoot sunrise, sunset, middle of the day if the light's good. Just a brilliant spot.
But these positions of the sun, as you know, are crucial to understanding how the light is going to affect the land. And there'll be times here, at different times of the year, like everywhere else, where you want to specifically be here because the sun's at a particular point at sunrise. So that may be May or June, or you know, it could be September or August, but there'll be a time, if you want a specific picture, to come to this spot when the sun's in that position.
Side lighting particularly is what we're often looking for. But having said that, with this type of environment, you can also shoot into the light if you've got big clouds and you got broken skies. So yeah, there are a lot of different kinds of opportunities here.
What I think we really need is, you know, a herd of wildebeest running through that with a lion in pursuit.
Well, I was thinking of crocodiles, but anyway, yeah.
So I see we've both decided on a telephoto composition. What lens is that you've got, Joe?
So this is the new Sigma 70-200 f2.8, brand new out of the box. Looking good too, I must say.
It looks very compact, and that's going to be a great tool for landscape photography. I think 70-200 just covers most of the focal lengths that landscape photographers really need.
It does at the telephoto end, absolutely.
I've got the 104 here, which, you know, if you need a bit more reach, the 400mm lens good. You know, if you take the occasional shot of wildlife, or you've got the reach there with the 400. Personally, I prefer the 70-200. Yeah, if there's only one, you've got it.
At the moment, yeah, absolutely. I'm sure it's going to be a popular lens though.
Well, that sun seems to be struggling through the cloud there.
I'm actually thinking, you know what, Colin, I might just have a look at it and see what the flare performance of this lens is like.
Right.
And you know what? Pretty fine.
Let's have a look.
Check it out.
God, that is amazing.
So, yeah.
That is amazing. There's just
nothing. It's just glowing.
Not blown anywhere.
There's no blown, and then there's no artifacts.
But I mean, that just the finish in this lens is fantastic.
It's mine. You can't have it.
I have to get a shot tomorrow. Well, it's looking like the fat lady has sung. If you can say that anymore.
Yeah. I think we've had our time here. It doesn't look like there's enough cloud for there to be anything going to happen overhead, and there's too much cloud in the west which means that's going to snuff out what remains of any late light. So yeah, I think we've had it.
Yeah, back for tea and medals.
Sounds good. Yeah, this is Dunstanburgh. It's been here for 750 years. But the other thing about this place that really resonates for me is that it was one of Turner's subjects in, when he was doing his wandering around in the UK in his younger years. But one of the things that makes it particularly relevant to photographers is that photography had literally been invented just a couple of years before. So it's now nearly 200 years since he made that painting. Photography's 200 years old. And this kind of connects them in a funny kind of way.
And just think how many images of this castle have been taken in those 200 years. I'll bet you most of them over the last 10 years.
That's literally true. And when I first started coming here, Northumberland really was a kind of place that everybody missed out. They went to York, went from London to York to Edinburgh, maybe drove through Northumberland and would ignore it. It has been somewhat discovered since.
Like everywhere else.
Yeah, but it's still really magnificent.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic to finally see this castle in reality, having looked at photographs in magazines and on social media for decades. It's very impressive.
It's actually got the largest footprint of any castle precinct in Northumberland and one of the largest in the UK. So it's just that they never managed to fill it all in because they ran out of money. And by the way, we're in this kind of extraordinary moat effect. You can see that it had a very powerful defensive kind of posture when they first thought about building it. It's just hard to believe now, isn't it? Everything's so relatively peaceful up here. Hard to believe anybody ever fought over it.
Well, I don't fancy the prospects of being in that moat there with hostile natives above with spears or arrows.
As a Scot, Colin, it would have been you as well, trying to attack it. So fantastic as it is, it's far too big to photograph really close up. So there's a spot that I know. It's actually about half a mile back down the coast where this sits in the landscape. So I'd like to show you that.
Good, I look forward to it.
Well, this perspective gives us the castle in the distance and the sea between us and the castle. It makes a great perspective.
Well, it's that man-made structure against such a natural foreground and the movement. I mean, the big challenge here, as we've discovered, is trying to do something with the movement of the sea over which you've no control. And it all comes down to chance, really, in the way that the waves break or the waves run back. And it's not easy. It's really not easy to get something that's going to work here.
Timing's the critical thing. That's the one thing that we do have control over, isn't it? And the great thing about shooting digitally is that you can sort of see how the pictures are unfolding as we go along. And I think you've had a go with a filter, which is
Well,
not
you've
something
turned me
you
to
do
the
with.
dark side. A wee stopper.
There you go.
I'm still not sure about it.
Well, I think movement is it's a controversial issue. A lot of people are very uncomfortable with the idea of representing movement as flow in an image, but I've always really liked it. I think it's something where if you can get that sense of energy
Yeah.
and shape and structure, then you can get some wonderful effects with it. And on the other hand, if you use a very short shutter speed, then you end up with something that's quite static, and that doesn't really tell you much about the sea.
It doesn't really work in the sea. I have to agree. And on the other hand, if we had this storm here, we could be using fast shutter speeds and
That's true.
freezing the waves.
That's true. Yeah.
with a drive on, shooting as quickly as possible, so you can get the stages of the wave as it rises and breaks. But clearly, it's not a day for that today.
Well, we might well be in the wave here too. That's the problem, isn't it? Because it would be amazing. You see the waves breaking between us and the castle now. If you could get low with a long lens and juxtapose that with the castle, that would make an incredible picture. But I have a feeling we'd be washed away in it. So
We get a little bit more away of light on the castle now. I mean, with a bit of luck, it might break through.
definitely worth hanging on.
Yeah, for sure.
Here at the moment.
For sure.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was, because I know it might be an area where we kind of differ, is what sort of lenses you prefer to work with if you're using 35mm?
Well, my two lenses are a 24-70 zoom and a 70 to 200mm zoom.
Right.
And I think the quality of modern zoom lenses is they exceed my needs. They're absolutely exceptional. And for me, the limiting factor, working in the landscape is weight. The upside of primes, of course, is they're optically better at one particular focal length, but you've got a lot more weight to carry there.
Yeah, that's true. And even with these very high resolution cameras, modern zooms are sharp enough. It's definitely not that. I think, to be honest, in my case, it's habit. I've used prime lenses all my working career, pretty much. And although I've tried zooms and I like them, and they really are good, but I don't know, something about them. I do feel happier continuing to use primes. But I'm receptive to the possibility of being persuaded otherwise.
Well, for me, one of the upsides of using zoom lenses is the fact that you can crop in camera. That facility to get that composition absolutely perfect in camera, whereas with a prime, you might know that you've got to cut a bit off or crop a bit off.
Or you can use your feet.
Yeah. Yeah. But you know what it's like if you're on the beach or in a forest. There might be a point at which you've got to shoot because of the arrangement of trees.
Perspective.
And you've got to shoot from that point. And
that's true.
If you've got fixed focal length lenses, then you're either going to be too tight or too wide. Perhaps not.
Yeah.
You might not be able to move far enough away because there's a tree behind you.
Yeah, we're going to fall off a cliff or something. Yeah. No,
so I think there's some upsides, and I think the proof of the pudding is that you'll not see any difference between a prime lens and a modern zoom lens in publication. If you're going to print a book, you're not going to see any difference there. So yes, prime lenses probably exceed zooms at certain focal lengths, but for what? It's like 100 megapixels. You can have 100 megapixels, but for what?
Yeah. No, that's true. And one of my favourite quotes in photography is Ansel Adams, who said there's nothing worse than a sharp picture of a fuzzy concept. So in many ways, a really good picture that's not incredibly sharp is still a really good picture, whereas a really boring picture that's really sharp is still really boring.
Yeah. I concur.
Incidentally, it's getting brighter, and I think we need to
pay attention.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Colin, this light now reminds me of Turner. You can just imagine him, can you? Maybe you can't, I don't know, standing here with an easel 200 years ago, trying to make sense of it all. But this light with the dark clouds and the brilliant sunlight, on the drum turrets is actually quite a good evocation.
It's just quite incredible. You can see where his inspiration came from.
Yeah, you really
Just
can.
losing that light again.
If you'd been a painter, it wouldn't have mattered. You just don't do it all from memory.
Well, you know, you've got artistic license.
It's actually one of the things about photography, isn't it? You know, we have to bear witness to the reality as it is in any given moment, and that is both the strength and the weakness of photography.
And it'd be frowned upon, you know, to change skies and manipulate the image. You know, whereas artists do that on a regular basis.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure JMW Turner would have loved Photoshop.
Oh, it's just wonderful to get that light on the castle there.
And we're in the shadow here, so we're getting the best of the
absolutely.
kind of cool, shady tones in the foreground. Beautiful. I can hardly believe it. I'm just going to quick adjust here.
Yeah, we're a bit far away now.
A little bit. What are you getting? I'm really liking this stepping you've got on the left-hand side of the frame.
That's working quite nicely.
Yeah. It's actually quite a nice little reflection of the cloud here on the right as well. Moment of calm, and then,
quite a lot of going for this. You can see that sort of reflected light's just brought the luminance values up on this.
It's actually amazing, isn't it? The barnacles are actually bringing some light into that foreground as well. You'll be able to bring out a little bit more when you edit it. Sunlight's back on the castle.
You know, we're beginning to get another drop and tear now as the tide goes out.
The sky is just incredible.
Brilliant.
It really is. I mean, all the times I've shot here, I have to say this is about the best I've ever seen it.
Really?
Yeah. You're going to have to come out with me more often.
Well, I'm sure it can be arranged.
The light on the castle it's just amazing.
Viewfinder.
Oh, nice. Yeah, really nice. Yeah.
The castle's beautiful.
Yeah. It really is spectacular. You can see why Turner painted it. I think if you're happy, we could maybe think about doing something else.
Yeah.
And I've got another spot I'd like to show you, which is right the other side of the castle, and it's completely different, and it also works really nicely later in the afternoon. This is the north side of Dunstanburgh, which is dominated by the Lindisfarne Tower. There, and that amazing basalt cliff face, of which these came from originally, you know, over the last several thousand years, and have been rolled by millions and millions of storms and tidal cycles, and the result is this lethal bedrock.
It is lethal. I mean, don't try this at home.
I mean, it is highly hazardous, but having said that, very rewarding.
Very rewarding. And just that light, as it just kissed the top of the boulders there, was fantastic. You know, obviously, I was using I'm sure you were as well, a small aperture to try and get as much depth of field on the rocks in the foreground. And it's really important. I mean, what I find on tours and in workshops is that, you know, what seems to concern people is the focus point. Do you find that at all?
Very much so, and often there's a misunderstanding of how depth of field really works. There's always only one plane of focus, even when you stop down. It's just that the appearance of effective depth of field greatly increases as you stop down. And so, yeah, you're right. The most important thing is to identify what the primary subject is. Yeah. And usually, certainly if it's the sort of composition that you and I have been working on over the last half an hour, it's the rocks themselves and background is the background.
Yeah.
It's the backdrop. So if it's not critically sharp, it isn't critical. And it's still, in most print environments, it'll still look well sharp.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't matter if it's not pin sharp, it's acceptably sharp. But the important thing is the boulders here are the subject, they're in the foreground, and it's important that they are really sharp. And of course that focus point, what's important, that if you've got a strategic boulder in the foreground, that's sharp, because there's nothing worse than having that out of focus, because out of focus areas, as you know, in the foreground hold the eye, and the brain's trying to make something of something that there's nothing to be made of, but what it does is stop the eye moving through the picture. So, and the great thing about these mirrorless cameras is that we can shoot the image and we can check it in the screen. And this is something that people don't do. They're too busy trying to get the next shot. But if you're on a tripod, shoot a few pictures, check the focus, and that way you don't get surprises when you get home on your computer. And they're usually not good surprises, Joe. And you think to yourself, why didn't I check that?
Yeah, exactly.
Because you can just move the focus slightly closer or further away with the camera in situ.
Yeah, and especially if you have the tripod, you may as well manually focus. The camera's then never hunting. It's just always stays at the same position. Just don't have to touch the lens at all once you stop
You've got
down.
Focus peaking now in these
Focus,
as well, which
it's
is
amazing. In live view, oh my goodness, especially for some of us of a certain age, I would suggest. Yeah, really, really helps, doesn't it? And it's incredibly sensitive. You know, if you're focusing with the lens at a wider aperture just for that purpose, check at that point and then stop down. And then often when you play back and you do look through the field by moving the 100% point around, you see that focus is really good across the whole field, and that gives you the confidence to carry on, and you can then not worry about it. Then you can think timing. The moment of the wave, the breaking wave, is it pulling back, is it moving forward, what's happening with the light in the castle, and all of those considerations, because you know that the camera itself has been taken care of, and then it's down to the kind of creative interpretation. But my goodness, if you've got the foreground slightly out of focus, it's a waste of time.
Yeah, totally. But these, I mean, that was a good point. I think the magnifiers that these cameras are equipped with, because in live view, what you see is what you get. You're not getting 2.8 depth of field, you're getting F11 if you've selected F11, and you can then use that focus point to see the real sharpness in live view of the tower and of the closest boulder. So there's no excuse. It's just about, you know, getting that composition right, shooting your picture and checking it and rechecking it, and you can go home knowing that you've nailed the picture.
Exactly, and I think it's finally on that point, it's interesting. You mentioned how the brain works and how the slightly out of focus area in the foreground will become like an interference pattern. It's really irritating, and yet we find it acceptable for the background to be slightly out of focus, because if you think culturally, you often will see, especially in these in the UK, it's soft, it's hazy, it's misty, there's lots of atmosphere, and the background isn't something that has to be really sharp. It can be a little bit softer. So it works in a number of different ways, but essentially it's how the brain interprets the scene.
Very much, very much.
I've literally lost count of the number of times I've been here. It's dozens and dozens and dozens of times, and I always find it quite thrilling, even though it can be frustrating because of the state of the tide and so forth. But it's just a wonderful place, and I'm sure I'll continue to come here. How did you find it?
Well, I mean, never having been here before, it's exceeded my expectations, and thank you for bringing me here and showing me these spots. It's been wonderful.
Good stuff. It's a pleasure. Well, I reckon that's it then. I think we've lost the light, so what do you reckon? Are we drinking beer or wine tonight?
Well, somebody mentioned drams.
Even better.
So, Joe, when you said sunset, this is taking it a bit far. What happened to the sun? And what are we doing stumbling about a basalt beach in darkness?
You may well ask. It's a bit crazy, wasn't it? But I just felt, well, how often is it really clear in the UK? Not that often. We've got a completely clear sky, and every star that we're ever likely to see in the sky is visible currently. And why not give it a try? And we're lucky enough to have these pretty fancy new lenses to have a play with, and they are good for star photography. So that's why. So there's a 14, I've got the 14 f1.4 Sigma.
Yeah, and I've got the 21.4. I mean, just the light gathering qualities is quite stunning. I mean, it's remarkable what they're able to capture out there.
They can see more than our eyes can, really, especially with these modern sensors. So it seems like an opportunity, and I feel like I've got my torch. I do like to try a little bit of light painting from time to time. So yeah, that's the idea. I think we ought to try it. Come on, before we go and get a beer.
Well, we'll give it a go.
Alrighty. Okay, so the composition here with the 14 is quite complex because there's a rock pool with rocks in it, which I definitely don't want to light because they'll look too strong. But there's a really nice sort of miniature cliff at the back of the rock pool, and then well, let's call it a lighthouse. It's really a navigation building on the cliff top there. And that's the focal point on the right. So what I'm aiming to do is, I'm not going to light it from here because that'll look really flat, but I'll put the self timer on, run round over there, and then point the light gently back and just light the tops of the cliff here, and hope to get reflections in the water. And then in the distance, yeah, this little navigation building, which provides a kind of distant focal point. And then of course the stars, which is really the point of the idea, is to try to capture something about the atmosphere of the stars in the
We've got
image.
a perfect night for it, haven't we?
It doesn't get better. It's pretty rare too.
And very little wind, so we're not getting any ripples in the surface of this pool. Just fantastic.
Yeah, good reflections it should be. So yeah, with a fairly low level of light, I'm really hoping the light painting will work.
I've decided to go for a naked astro shot. If I can manage to capture it without these torchlight beams in the foreground.
I promise to turn it off.
So I've managed to capture the navigation tower there with a bit of reflection in the water. But the sky is absolutely amazing, and I've done very little in the way of astrophotography because I like to sleep at night. But but this has really got me hooked. I'm really excited about this, and I was planning actually to experiment with it. So Joe, you've done me a great favour in bringing me here and for us to go through this little exercise. It's fantastic. Really enjoying the experience.
Oh, I agree. It's not something that I would naturally do, because I do like to be able to see what I'm doing, but actually there is an excitement in seeing what the camera and the lens can actually see, which we can't, and that includes colour, which certainly at night we're just down to the rod vision in the backs of our eyes, aren't we? And so it's quite amazing how the digital sensor can see the colours that are there.
Well, it's fantastic, and you know, I kind of understand now and grasp just what makes it so addictive. It's what you see in your screen after you've shot that your eye is not seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we're done here. Are we going to get these tea and medals then?
That's the best idea you've had all day.
Well, let's get out of here.
It's funny how sometimes when you're just driving along, you spot something. It's not part of the agenda, but it happens to be raining, so there's not much point probably doing an open landscape shoot at the moment, and yet we found ourselves in this wood.
But it was that burst of colour that we saw from the car.
Yeah.
And the rain, you know, everything's so saturated. I mean, this is an environment where there's a great deal of potential, and of course there's very, very little wind, which I think is part of the reason why so many of the leaves are still in these trees. I mean, we've got limes there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's magical, and in fact some of them are still green even though we're well into November now.
It's incredible. I mean, I get so much excitement from being in an environment like this, because I think what we're doing is tapping into our ancestors' instincts. We're foraging, we're hunting, and we're gathering images. We're not trying to forage for food or fowl. And you know, during this time of the year, I spend most of my time in Woodland because it's the most productive time for colour and the whole autumnal scene. Whereas in February, you'll not find me in a wood, just as our ancestors would be, you know, collecting fungi or fruits in the forest in August and September. But in February, they're going to be breaking a hole in the ice and trying to catch a fish.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I'll be on a hillside somewhere or on a moorland trying to capture a dawn flush in the top of a mountain covered in snow. And it's using your time as efficiently as possible. And this is a great opportunity.
It is. It's those traditional field skills, is what you've just described. It's so much part of the joy of photography, and just as a matter of interest, you mentioned foraging, and look at this.
It's wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure these are edible. I don't really have a depth of knowledge about mushrooms, but it's not worth taking the risk. But you know, because I think few people come here, they're completely undisturbed. But look at them, there's a whole field of them.
It's a whole sequence, sort of like 15 meters of trail, and that's all the myceliae under the ground. It's just fruiting at this time of year.
Fantastic to
It's
see.
miraculous, yeah. It shows the soil's in very good shape here. The conditions are, I love it when it's soft light and rain like this, and in the woods the only thing that is better is a little bit of mist as well, but I'm sure we'll be able to do something here.
Well, I'm confident. How'd you get on, Joe?
Hey Colin, how are you doing?
Hey, not badly. Not badly. Tremendous light we've had, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic.
That's beautiful.
Just getting a little bit of sunlight now, which is, you know, sometimes just a tiny bit you can get away with.
It's just clipping the edges of the leaves.
Yeah, and just
Just
drawing.
lift it. I think I'll just lift that. That was
Yeah.
a bit of luck. That was me that brought that, Joe.
You take the credit for everything. Yeah. No, I tell you what though, what a fabulous spot.
Just random, but you know, we used our instincts. We saw that vibrant colour and the wet leaves, and we knew there was potential here, and I'm sure you've managed to capture something more as well.
Yeah, what about you? Have you got on?
Well, I got a couple of pictures. Let me have a look. So that's one there.
Wow.
But it's just
That's amazing.
the brambles are really red, and I focused that because there was absolutely no wind.
Yeah.
So there should be depth from front to back.
Yeah.
And the other image I've shot, which will be quite some way away because of the focus stacking.
No kidding. Wow.
I did quite a few because there was wind moving.
Yeah. And it's totally different to mine, where all the images I've been concentrating on have been woodland trees and leaves.
So let me see your other photograph. Here's that sun now. It's really
Is that too strong now?
Bring
Probably
it,
is, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, probably going to get a burnout there.
I'll try one anyway, because why not? Nice. Yeah, I think it's okay actually. Look, it really defines, especially the central tree, gives a nice bit of lighting to it. So it might work softer as I go back through the sequence, as you can see. And then further back, you can see mostly I'm looking for these little aprons of leaves in the autumn leaves.
Lovely, beautiful.
And you just the atmosphere of the forest, really. Tried a few variations. This is the beach a little bit earlier.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah, with that very orangey tones.
Yeah, captured that well. Really captured the essence of autumn there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, how if you think there are times when sometimes it feels like you're having to force it, and then other times you just arrive somewhere with no agenda at all and just wander, get tuned in, and it just comes alive for you.
Well, there's no obvious photographs here, but I spent probably 25 minutes without a camera forensically looking at the forest floor and to try and find something with a composition in it. In fact, I found that image now, which is an upright image.
Yes.
I can't turn it, or the camera will try and correct it.
Yeah.
But
That's beautiful.
I've managed to hold all the leaves in there, and just
that's beautiful. The textures and colours are amazing.
It's just rewarding to make that order from chaos.
That's fairly flat, so no focus stacking needed there,
No,
presumably.
nothing.
Yeah.
2470's got enough depth of field to hold all that. So I was really delighted with both these pictures. I mean, you know, when we set out this morning and we saw the weather, there was very little in the way of hope for the picture which we had intended to take, but this is what.
Yeah, we've
this is what really
completely altered the plan.
Yeah.
Because of the weather, and actually this has really worked beautifully.
Which is what we both do when we're out on our own.
Exactly.
You follow the light and you prioritise where you're going to get images, or potentially images. And I mean, if it was bright as it is now, we wouldn't have even bothered to stop in this forest.
One of the things about woodland that I love is that because, as you say, there's no obvious subject matter, there's this question of how do you balance the issues of composition, form, shape, line, texture, and also the atmosphere of the place. And I think we've both come up with different sort of solutions here, but fundamentally it's composition that makes the pictures work.
And that can't be automated. It takes years to develop your own vision and the ability to distill images from the forest. That's what's so rewarding.
It is, yeah. You were saying the chaos of it earlier, which actually is true. It is very chaotic, isn't it? But it's also a lot of the fun of it. It's this jigsaw puzzle that you have to work out in space and form, which is finally what makes the whole thing come to life. And that's the challenge.
Well, really delighted with this morning, and let's see what we can find this afternoon.
All right, but I think lunch first.
Let's hope so. Wow, is this all sandstone, Joe?
It is, yeah. Can you believe it? Honestly, the difference between this and what we photographed yesterday is just amazing.
I mean, these erosion patterns are fantastic. There's going to be a huge opportunity for intimate landscapes here.
And that's it. It's a kind of micro world of line and shape, texture, colour, and it works really well, doesn't it, with the dampness?
The lines, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have this wet than dry.
Yeah, it increases the contrast, and yeah, it's a lovely spot. I've come here for many years, so actually literally since the 1980s, the first time I came here.
In the 80s?
Yeah, in the 80s.
Yeah. Well, you're no newcomer to this location.
But it's your first time, right?
Never been on this coastline before, but it's just great to see these rock formations. Really excited about trying to get some photographs here. So I think we'll go for a little forage.
Brilliant. Yes, bit of hunter-gathering of light and form.
Yeah, for images.
Yeah. It's actually amazing how these grids, you know, it's like squared up forms.
I think I'll go and try on the seaward side here because there's going to be more erosion on that side, I would imagine.
That's true, yeah. It's also darker, that's the only downside. Some fantastic cross-bedded sandstone there.
Yeah, it's all just moved at an angle.
Yeah.
And that's what, 300 million rather?
It's in that area, so it was laid down when this was near the equator, this part of the continent as it was then.
So that's all
Pangea.
Jurassic?
It's, yeah, or slightly before even, yeah. Yeah, is it Cretaceous? Cretaceous after Jurassic?
Oh, I can never remember. I've forgotten that rhyme, that something about camel's knees creaking.
Okay, nice one. Hey, how you getting on?
Well, really excited about what I've managed to shoot here. Fantastic location. I mean, just look at the shapes and colours on that sandstone.
Oh, that's you so-and-so, that is fantastic. God
well,
damn it. You're not supposed to be doing photography that good. It's
This
my
is your location as well.
Come on, let's see some more.
I was using focus stacking in that.
Okay.
So I was just testing. It was ideal simply because there's no foliage moving, you know, and the camera was just shooting what it needed to do. So there was that image, and there was that image there.
This one with these tram lines. Yeah. And again, you're at an angle. So with the angle, you're like, there's quite a distance in there, isn't there, that you have to cope with, and because you're quite close, hence the need to focus stack.
Yeah, and we were so lucky, as you know, with that sun. We managed to shoot just before that sun came out, and this wouldn't have been that great if the sun had hit that, because my shadow was right in front of it anyway. So what did you get?
So, well, very different, not surprisingly. So this one with the house, which...
That's fantastic. That's just so typically you, that picture.
Oh,
Very
don't
much.
say that, don't say that.
Oh,
but the other one I was quite happy with is actually, oh, I'll tell you what, I've got one here. Look at that. Colin Pryor.
Converging lines on an idiot.
Converging lines on the tripod is what I had in mind, but anyway.
Joe, it's a masterpiece. We need to get that in the film.
We do.
It is.
I think that's my shot of the day. And then there's one of the last one at the end where I'm really quite happy with this vertical. So now that one is shot with a 24, and it also has, it's a lot of depth to it in terms of physical space, but it won't be as sharp as yours because it won't have the focus stacking. But again, because I think this is like more of a pictorial image, it's maybe not so essential to have that sharp detail, super sharp detail front to back.
And I think the issue you would have if you were focus stacking is the waves that get really sort of messy out there.
Yeah.
And I think that would become a distraction. But I really like that circular, you know, it's that circularity in the rocks that you've captured there. Really good spot.
To
Fantastic.
me, it feels quite organic. So, and this is one of the many characteristics of this place. So, yeah, it's got loads to go at.
But you know, I find often on workshops when you come to a location like this where there really is only smaller landscapes that you know that many people just don't like the challenge of trying to shoot intimate landscapes. And yet when the weather was the way it was this morning, you know, if you really look for images, you can go away with a keeper rather than walk away with a rather mediocre wide angle shot.
Well, part of the beauty of it is that you can very definitely find your own pictures here, because there is no obvious picture.
Yeah, and they're your pictures rather than
Yeah, so it makes it quite a special place, I think.
Very much, and for me it's been great to see another of your locations, Joe.
Fantastic. Well, speaking of that, I have another thing I want to show you just up the coast. Well, here we are.
Looks quite fantastic. This light's lovely, isn't it?
It is fantastic. And this is Holy Island, and this is the legendary causeway, which is flooded twice a day, and now it's just on the fall, and we can get over to the island before sunset. We're losing the light second by second here. I like to convince myself it's not all about the light, but actually it is.
It is.
Well, 5 minutes ago there was brilliant late sunlight on the castle, and I have to say that was quite magical. And now it's gone very, very flat. Sky's still pretty, and the shapes are kind of cool.
It's dropped into that cloud bank, unfortunately. And it's gone. Just a few seconds earlier and we could have grabbed that.
Yeah.
That's what landscape photography is about, unfortunately.
It's full of frustrations as well. If it was easy, everybody would do it, right?
I'll set up in anticipation of something happening.
Well, you never know. You seem to be pretty good at making things happen. It's funny actually how the causeway has this, it's very, very unpredictable. So even though we read the crossing times and we should have been fine, when we came down, in fact we expected it to have been clear for about 10 minutes and it was still up, and there was a lot of traffic and it was quite congested, and that held things up. So
well, I think there was quite a bit of incompetent driving going on.
Well, there's a surprise.
So we can blame them for our demise. It was so close, Joe, so
Oh.
close. We'll need to come back.
It could be worse, couldn't it?
Well, on balance, losing one image from all the locations we've been, from the castles, from the forests, early morning, late evening, we've done pretty well, I think.
I'd say so. Yeah, we really have.
And you know, this was a push, but it didn't. The cards didn't play in our favour, Joe.
One step too far, Colin. Yeah. And you know what? I'm just going to switch to black and white here, because I'm thinking, you know, it might just be that in spite of the fact that the light doesn't look terribly clever, stylistically, it might just suit something in monochrome.
It's easy to become despondent, you know, when you fail in a situation like this, and you've just got to pick yourself up and you focus your mind on the next time you're out, and that's the key, to keep going. It's very easy, I think, to lose your mojo over periods of time, not just on specific instances like this. But I think the key is to focus on projects, long-term projects, so that you're driven to a goal, to achieve something. And it's very comfortable when you get to our age, Joe, as you know, to sit by the log burner and you know, sip whiskey. But you need something to get you out there. And the climbers used to talk about the rat, the size of your rat, this imaginary rat that existed in your stomach and gnawed away relentlessly at your stomach from the inside. And climbers that scaled huge vertical mountains were said to have a huge rat, because this thing gnawed away and chased them out from the log burners up these mountains. And that, you either have that going to push you out there, or you don't, and the key is to try and find a way to stoke that fire.
I think we're lucky actually in that respect, because there's so much pleasure to be had just being out with your camera and your tripod, walking, getting the exercise. I hear writers talk a lot about losing their inspiration and waiting for inspiration, and actually all the really, really successful writers, they just get up in the morning, go to their office, work for an hour and a half, then have a coffee, then go back. And most of them seem to work in the mornings, because there's always exceptions. And they work. They have a routine of work, because that's the only way that they can preserve their sense of inspiration. They get inspired by work. And that's, I think, true certainly for us, that it's actually being out there. You may not feel like it sometimes. You may not feel like you're going to be inspired. The light may not even be doing it for you. But just going out and using the kit and reminding yourself of the importance of connecting with nature as often as you can, I think that helps keep you going. And it is a pleasurable physical process as well, which is obviously very different to sitting in front of a laptop, which writers do, doing what they do. So we're fortunate in that respect. But yeah, I think it's still easy to think, well, it's not doing it for me anymore, I'll do something else. But there is no alternative to going out there.
No, I totally agree, Joe, and I've always said that it's a form of meditation. You know, once you're out there and you're connected with the environment, with the landscape that you're in, you just get into you get into the zone, and 3 hours can pass like that. You know, for people that find time passes slowly, you're becoming engaged with photography. If you're really truly interested, it can just vanish. You're completely absorbed by what you're looking at, whether it's trees in a forest or whether it's mountains. You're out there and you're hunting for images, and you're connected and engaged at every level, and you know, it's a great state of mind.
And think of just 2 days ago when we were by the coast with the waves breaking over and over, relentlessly over and over again. You start to realise that there's a sort of pattern, although every wave is unique, that this is sort of pattern. So it dies down, and then gradually they come back, and then they die down again. And you start to tune in to those rhythms of nature.
Yeah, subconsciously, yeah.
And you keep watching and observing all of the details of the water moving around the rocks. It's something very therapeutic about that.
Very therapeutic.
And as you say, I think it is very akin to meditation.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's being at one with nature and being sort of totally connected with it.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better, really.
No, it doesn't. You know, that's what brings us out again and again.
Yeah.
Well, that's all from Colin and Joe in the second series of Behind the Lens. To help support us in producing this content and to keep up with our latest videos, please subscribe to our channel.
Can't believe how lucky we are to have done this. You reckon we'll get another chance?
You mean you haven't heard? We're going to do a third one. This time in the north.
You're kidding me.
You're back in my patch again, I'm afraid, Joe.
Ah. Sounds good.